Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Thank you. It's so good to see you here today celebrating the memory of one of the most significant events that's taken place in American history. I'm Reuben Blackwell, and I'm here to just drop a little bit of info, just a little bit of info and a little bit of challenge. And I'm really blessed to be part of this phenomenal team that's called OIC. Thank you for these phenomenal folk who work hard every day to make sure that we bring together uplift for all of our community in every area that we can possibly bring help and support. For everyone who needs help, there is help. So come to OIC if you need help. The issue that we're here today is to celebrate and remember what happened over 150 years ago. Understand that American history is world history, and none of us can be separated from what's taken place in our past. Sometimes we want to look back in history and try to discern and understand and support whatever perspective that we have. But the bottom line is that nobody can rewrite what happened yesterday. Whatever happened, happened. People did what they did. The question that we have before us is, what do we do with the time that we've been given today? Because our actions, our words, our thoughts become history for the next generation. We got to understand that America, just like the rest of the world, was created and founded by individuals who really didn't care about anybody other than sustaining their own legacy. Let's tell the truth about it all. And we're here at Juneteenth to remember the journey that enslaved Africans and their descendants have had to deal with since the 1600s. This is not a 100-year journey. It's not a 300-year journey. It is a journey of almost half a millennia. And we also must understand that the people who were empowered because of superior weaponry, because of the ability to use technology to their advantage, didn't just bring benefit to everyone, but they brought everyone together to create opportunity for a few. But because God is sovereign, somebody say God, come on now, He's able to turn evil into good. Now today I'm Reuben the person, is that all right? I'm not a title. I ain't just leading OIC. This is all about what I think. So I'm going to make that disclaimer before I get going, all right? When the Constitution of the United States was framed, it was framed by a core of individuals who determined that nobody else was on their level. So for the millions of black people that were forced to make the journey from northern and western Africa across dangerous seas into the Caribbean to make the first stop to colonize and develop and grow crops that would benefit Great Britain, Spain, France, Portugal, and quote-unquote civilized Europe. That was the foundation of a system of economy that you and I have had to deal with, empower, and develop. Black people were not considered full people. Y'all know that, right? And so for the journey of the descendants of African enslaved individuals, and I do not call my ancestors slaves. You got to work with me. I do not call my ancestors slaves. They were people who endured oppression, dealt with serious, intentional, violent treatment and were brought to this land to develop a land so that kings and queens and ruler class, not all white people, let's make the truth known, it ain't for everybody. It was for privileged classes of people. Everybody else was devalued. So black people, at the penning of the Constitution of the United States of America, only had a value of 3/5 of a human. 3/5 of a human. So the same people that wrote the preamble to the Constitution that said America was here for everyone had a limited perspective of the definition of the word everyone. So the journey of the African descendants in America is that we have been pawns in a game to strengthen economies that were never created to benefit the people who work to make the economy great. So when our ears hear "Make America Great Again," and yes, I'm saying that, our ears do not hear inclusion. Our ears do not hear representation. And our ears do not hear there is a place at every table for you. Because when the United States as a union, 100 or so years into the development of our country, the great President Abraham Lincoln stated publicly that he was not so much concerned about the issue of the enslaved African. So when the Emancipation Proclamation was written, it was only written in order to keep the United States that was from Maryland north empowered in favor with an international community that had begun to see the 10 Confederate states, of which North Carolina is one, as a legitimate sovereign nation. Lincoln wrote in his defense of why fight the South was that African people are not the issue. He said, I would not free anyone if I could keep the Union together. I would free everyone if we can keep the Union together. The real issue is keep the Union together. So people of color saw a glimmer of hope that we'd have an opportunity to be able to participate finally in the work that we did. So in September of 1862, Lincoln conferred with his cabinet and his military, which at that time was the Army and the Navy. Want no airplanes. All right. The Army and the Navy, and in his Emancipation Proclamation, he stated that for every state that had risen up in rebellion against the United States of America, as of January 1, 1863, the people that were enslaved would become free. But for those African people that lived in Missouri, Arkansas, and Kentucky, which stayed with the northern states, and a component of Tennessee, and specific counties in Virginia, which would later become West Virginia, those states would be allowed to retain their slaves. We need to understand this. So in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and on, Louisiana. Black folk got the word through the same network that told them how to break free from the oppression that they've been dealing with. And they found the way to say, okay, we might not be able to get there the same time you do, but we're going to be praying. So December 31, 1862, encamped, oppressed folk were sitting around campfires right here in Rocky Mount. And they were praying that what they heard about this president setting folk free was going to be true. They were singing songs like "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." I know you coming for me, Lord. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. There is a way out of where we are. They were singing songs and praying that the white man would keep his promise because they'd never seen a promise that was kept before. January 1, 1863, Lincoln went into a room of international ambassadors. He greeted them all and shook their hands, and he said, "Today, destiny will be rewritten." He went into his Oval Office, signed the proclamation stating that every black person would become free in the Confederate States of America, although they did not recognize his freedom. His word, I'm sorry. So that day, the only people who were set free were 10 to 20,000 black folk that had run away from their slave masters. And in North Carolina, I'm proud to say that there was a settlement in the East, in the Outer Banks, in New Bern, and in that territory where Union armies occupied the land because they had access to the Atlantic Ocean and supplies. 6 months later, a contingent from the coast marched into the interior of eastern North Carolina, and they came right here to Rocky Mount. And they settled their sights on a place that was producing more cotton than any other mill in North Carolina for the Confederate States and for the Confederate Army, and that's the Rocky Mount Mills. So there is an enactment that probably most of us don't attend because ain't none of us gonna act like slaves, is that right? So in July, the Union Army came to Rocky Mount, and they had two things to do: decimate the mill and blow up the railroad. And when they finished here, the next thing they were assigned to do was to go to Tarboro and blow up the bridge there too. So the history of Rocky Mount is the history of America. Fast forward to 2018. Black folk were waiting for someone to write a letter, sign a document proclaiming their freedom. Today, we all have the opportunity to write our own Emancipation Proclamation. We don't have to wait for anyone, black, red, yellow, white, brown. We choose freedom every day. Our journey is political, it's psychological, it's physical, it's spiritual, and it's economic. We've got to make decisions every day that we value ourselves as much as we value everyone else. So you must understand that when we hear the Star-Spangled Banner, we desire and yearn to stand and be proud of the nation that we helped build. But our collective social memory says that our value has always been diminished. When Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, his own party members told him, "You're going to bring another level of passion to the Confederate Army, and they're going to script this narrative around rape of black men with white women. They're going to script this narrative of black people taking over economically, and they're going to script a narrative that no white person will ever be safe." And so that consciousness and that threat, which is false, still pervades the collective consciousness of America. So we find it disrespectful when we hear the Star-Spangled Banner and men bow in a prayerful reverence. That's deemed to become irrational, revolutionary, and unpatriotic. But it's all right to bring your enemy into the Oval Office. It's all right to create business deals with folk you fought for 40 years. It's all right for black men to still be devalued and beat and disrespected and underpaid, and black women's health to still be sacrificed. So this holiday, Juneteenth, we celebrate what really happened. It's more than about the great vendors, the phenomenal music, the wonderful fellowship. This is about the survival of a people and the greatness of a nation. How you treat the poorest among you is how heaven defines your greatness. For those of us who ascribe to the Christian faith, Jesus said, if you desire to be great, then you serve the least. And he said to his disciples and the rulers at that time when he walked this earth in a natural form, that his evaluation of our spiritual success, if you clothed the naked, fed the hungry, and visited those who were in prison. Creation of economy at the expense of other people is evil. So in Rocky Mount, what we got to keep in front of our faces and be unashamed and unapologetic for the black, the white, the red, the yellow, and the brown is that we can recreate a new America where everybody is valued the same. So place matters because we're all in the same space. Health disparities exist because somebody doesn't value somebody's physical being. So we got to decide, for those of us who are at the bottom of the disparity list, Am I going to value myself so I make good health choices? I make good education choices. I make good political choices. I make good economic choices. So the space in which I live is a blessed space too. America is the greatest nation on this earth. It is. And it's great, not because of our history. Our history is flawed, it's painful, and it's violent. But Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. Does that mean we believe in the Second Amendment, want to shoot everybody down? That ain't what it means. It means that we will not allow oppression to settle in our minds and in our hearts. It means that we look for public officials to set policies that are equitable and that give opportunity to everyone at the same time. And it means that everybody has a right to live healthy, be educated, and have an opportunity to earn their way through life. So I thank the Juneteenth Committee. I thank Community Empowerment. I thank the City of Rocky Mount. I thank every vendor that's come here that said we value the history and the legacy and the journey of African descendants in America. And we will not forget, I will not forget, that I had relatives that were lynched and raped and beat and oppressed. But I will also not forget that I will have a generation after me that will not suffer the same discrimination that they did and that I do. We gotta commit that we build a Rocky Mount and an America that we can all be proud of and that we can all say belongs to us. God bless America, and God bless all her people, and God bless Juneteenth. Thank you so much. God bless you.